everyone, my name's Amy, and on behalf of the Academic Writing Education Center, I welcome you to Reading to Connect. In our Week 16 class, yes, we made it this far, we're looking at bridging the gap between reading and writing, and we're going to be talking about coherence, cohesion, and unity. Let's start. In today's lesson, the first goal we're trying to accomplish is to understand the meaning and importance of coherence and cohesion. The second goal is that we're going to try to see how are they different. The third goal is that we're going to try to see what the problems with cohesion and coherence that could appear in written text. Then we're going to try to learn about different cohesive devices. Next, in academic writing, how can we establish cohesion and coherence? We will be looking at several strategies. So today we'll be talking about three different types of, you can say, skill and how to maintain the flow in academic writing, namely coherence, cohesion, and unity. First, we're going to start with coherence. What is coherence? Coherence basically connects different idea, paragraph, sentences all together. It basically helps us to go from idea to idea, sentence to sentence, or paragraph to paragraph to create unity. It usually focuses on the macro structure of the entire essay. It helps us to maintain the flow of idea in a logical order. Now, what could happen if you don't have coherence? It can actually hinder the reader's readability, namely our understanding of the text, and perhaps resulted in a misunderstanding on the main idea of the essay. So the big question is, what factors are there that contributes to the coherence of an academic text? As we previously stated, coherence helps us to move from idea to idea, sentence to sentence, or paragraph to paragraph. And so we're going to be talking about two different types of identification skills that we can use to establish coherence. Number one, we'll be looking at logic order or logical organization. Next, we can also use parallel structure to help with the establishment of coherence. So when we talk about logical organization or logical order, there are 5 different structures that we can use, namely chronological or sequential order, compare and contrast structure, cause and effect, topic order, or the use of definition. We're now going to be looking at how these 5 different type of organization can help us to establish coherence. First, let's look at this short paragraph, and then we're going to try to identify what feature in there actually tells us that this is a chronological or sequential order. And then we're going to identify what features were present in this text that actually help us understood that it is organized using a chronological or sequential order. Let's go. The effect of a social stories intervention on the social skills of male students with autism spectrum disorder. When conducting the intervention, the purpose, method, and length of the intervention were explained to the participants' teachers and parents, and they consented to cooperate. The stages of the intervention were as follows. The social skills questionnaire by Stone and colleagues were completed by the parents of the children with ASD as a pre-test assessment. Then, the child's behavior, understanding of language, and reading level were individually assessed in the classroom and the playroom by teachers and researchers. In addition, other problems such as screaming, crying, yelling, as reported by the parents and teacher, were assessed. Based on the results, necessary information was gathered about the frequency of a given behavior, the place where the behavior occurred, and how it occurred. Finally, the social stories were written. When we are looking at this particular paragraph, we can see that it uses the words such as stages. By looking at the word stage, we know that there's going to be several of those. And then by using transitional signals such as follows, then, in addition, finally, we understood how the ideas are organized in a chronological, hence time manner. Which one comes first? Which one comes second? What comes at last? And so these are the different features of a chronological organization. Next, we're going to be looking at the features of compare and contrast in establishing coherence. Again, look at the paragraph, and we're going to come back and identify its features. Let's go. The wind and the sun as sources of green energy. The wind and the sun provide renewable energy, at least as long as the wind blows and the sun shines. They are also free. Through harvesting, their energy is not. Their energy is stored in a similar manner. The sun's heat can be absorbed by specially designed panels, which convert the sun's heat and light into electrical energy, which is stored within the battery. High-tech windmills power a turbine, which converts wind into electrical energy and stored within the battery. The two sources differ, however, in more ways than they are similar. Wind energy is more cost-effective than solar energy is. The panels that gather the sun's energy are more expensive to install. So expensive, in fact, that it may take many years before consumers start to save the money they would have spent on oil or natural gas. Wind is a more reliable source of energy because it can blow all day and all night. The sun cannot shine all day and all night, and even during the day, it can be blocked by clouds. Solar panels require less maintenance than wind turbines, but not so much less to make them more cost-effective. So, having read the paragraph, we know that it talked about two different kinds of renewable energy, wind and sun. Since they're both renewable energy, perhaps a lot of people might mistake them for the same. However, in this particular paragraph, it talked about how their storage method is similar. Nonetheless, the two sources does differ, as we can see in the highlighted bit in the latter half of the first paragraph. Now, it started to compare and contrast. First, in the second paragraph, we can see in the first sentence, it talked about how wind energy is more cost-effective than solar energy. So we know that they're different in terms of cost-effectiveness. Then, in the second sentence, it talked about how the sun's energy is more expensive. In the middle of the second paragraph, we can see that wind is more reliable. So it talked about its reliability. Again, it compared and said that the sun cannot shine all day. Hence, it talked about its inability to generate energy during the nighttime. At the end of the second paragraph, it talked about how solar panels require less maintenance than wind turbine. So it talked about its durability. Overall, we can see that in this paragraph, it distinctly discussed the different features of the differences and similarity that wind and sun energy provides using a series of signals as well as clear pronouns to indicate which exactly is the point they're discussing right now. So these are the features of compare and contrast organization. Next, let's talk about the cause and effect organization and the feature it helps to establish coherence. Again, read the paragraph. We're going to come back and discuss. The impact of writing anxiety, writing achievement motivation, and writing self-efficacy on writing performance, a correlational study of Iraqi tertiary EFL learners. Anxiety is viewed to be a major factor affecting academic performance by a considerable number of researchers. In particular, anxiety has been found to have an adverse effect on the writing outcome of L1 learners. Septi et al., for instance, introduced anxiety as the major factor in decline of students' academic achievement in the EFL/ESL context. In addition, anxiety is related to other elements, such as self-efficacy, motivation, as well as attitude towards writing. Kermitz, for instance, stressed that anxiety gives rise to demotivation and discouragement on the parts of the student, and as a result, they may develop negative self-efficacy and attitude towards writing.
It can be said that anxiety is deemed as detrimental to students' writing performance, specifically in the EFL contexts, such as the Arab EFL context.
Now, in this paragraph, it talked about anxiety and how anxiety is a major factor affecting academic performances. In terms of its cause and effect organization and its feature, we can see that in the third sentence, it talked about an adverse effect on, and it started to describe the different outcomes it comes with anxiety. Furthermore, in the bottom half, we can see that it gave a rise to demotivation and discouragement as anxiety have triggered these different symptoms. And then it uses the signal word. As a result, they may develop and so on and so forth. More side effects that are a result of anxiety. So in this particular paragraph, we can clearly see how anxiety is the root cause and how different effects are being illustrated to demonstrate that anxiety is the root cause and how it has caused the other symptoms. So these are the different features of cause and effect organization. Next, we're going to be talking about topical organization. Read the paragraph and we're going to come back and discuss.
Multiple intelligences. Howard Gardner created a list of 7 intelligences. The first 2 are ones that have been typically valued in schools. The next 3 are usually associated with arts. And the final 2 are what Howard Gardner called personal intelligence. Linguistic intelligence involves sensitivity to spoken and written languages, the ability to learn languages, and a capacity to use language to accomplish certain goals. This intelligence includes the ability to effectively use language to express oneself rhetorically or poetically, and language as a means to remembering information. Writers, poets, lawyers, and speakers are among those that Howard Gardner sees as having high linguistic intelligence. Logical mathematical intelligence consists of the capacity to analyze problems logically, carry out mathematical operations, and investigate issues scientifically. In Howard Gardner's words, it entails the ability to detect patterns, reason deductively, and think logically. This intelligence is most often associated with scientific and mathematical thinking. Musical intelligence involves skills in the performance, composition, and appreciation of musical patterns. It encompasses the capacity to recognize and compose musical pitches, tones, and rhythms. According to Howard Gardner, musical intelligence runs in an almost structural parallel to linguistic intelligence.
Now, what's interesting about topical organization is that it is usually talking about several different points of the same field or same category. In this particular paragraph, it talked about 3 different kinds of intelligence. We can see in the introduction paragraph, which is the first one, it talks about 7 intelligence and what these are. In this particular paragraph, they pulled out 3 different kinds of intelligence to discuss, namely linguistic intelligence, logical mathematical intelligence, and musical intelligence. With these 3, you will see that they are actually organized in the exact same manner. Namely, they're being explained and they're being related to the topic and how these intelligence are related to your performances. So these are the features of topical organization, which explains similar items of the same category or group. Now, the last one, we're going to be looking at the definition organization. Read the following paragraph and we're going to come back and discuss.
The impact of writing anxiety, writing achievement motivation, and writing self-efficacy on writing performance, a correlational study of Iraqi tertiary EFL learner. The term anxiety is defined as a learner's experience of feeling of uneasiness, worries, and physiological responses while performing a task for a specific language skill such as speaking, reading, or writing. In terms of anxiety in writing, Erkin and Seban have defined it as the tendency of a person to avoid the process of writing, particularly when it is to be evaluated in some way. However, writing anxiety is defined in this study as a situational aspect, which refers to the feelings of worries accompanied by reactions as in excessive sweating, pounding of the heart, and negative expectation, as well as maladaptive behavior of a learner's experience while performing a particular writing task at a given time and place. The maladaptive behaviors are described as a lack of confidence, whereby individuals interpret the error they make as an indication of inability and feeling of anxiety that could lead them to withdraw efforts and avoid challenge, which eventually undetermined the quality of the learning process.
So in terms of definition organization, what needs to have is number one, a very clear topic. We can see in this paragraph, again, anxiety is the main topic. But exactly what is anxiety? In terms of defining and explaining what anxiety is, we can see some keyword appearing, such as the word defined as, refers to, described as. All these words actually refers to one meaning. They are trying to explain what the term anxiety is, what their side effects are, what are the symptoms, etc. So this is the definition organization, which is great during the process of literature review when you're trying to devise specific terms or jargon that are particular to your field and that common readers might not understand. Next, we're going to be talking about parallelism or paragraph structure. What is it? Essentially, they're using matching words, phrases, or sentences to structure what expresses similar ideas. What it does is that it actually creates a sense of balance within the sentence. How it can help us reader to better comprehend this text is that it actually helps us to go from ideas to idea, sentence to sentence, and help us to connect and establish a relationship between these different ideas. So let's look at the first example. The term anxiety is defined as a learner's experience of feelings of uneasiness, worries, and physiological responses while performing a task for a specific language skill, such as speaking, reading, or writing. In this example, we can see that it listed several different vocabularies that explained what the learner's feeling when they feel anxious. They're actually all similar. You can see that all these terms talked about a negative emotion during the process. And so by relating that to the word anxiety, we can better understand what anxiety means and how it helps us to comprehend the overall idea of anxiety in a more comprehensive manner. Furthermore, under the category of language skills, it again listed speaking, reading, and writing as part of it. Similar group and similar ways of writing, as you can see, all with ing endings, help us to better grasp the concept of what language skills are. Now, let's look at the second example. By looking at the second example, we can see that linguistic intelligence involves sensitivity to spoken and written language, the ability to do something, and the capacity to do something. What is interesting about this particular parallel structure is number one, you will see that they're all using nouns: sensitivity, ability, capacity. Furthermore, in the latter half, they both use the same phrasal structure of the ability to, the capacity to. Similar grammatical structure not only help us to maintain the flow of idea, it actually adds literary beauty to it. With repetitive sentence structure, it actually creates a musical rhythm when we are reading it in our mind, and which actually help us to understand the meaning of what the author is trying to express even better. Now we're gonna have a little bit of exercise. You should do this on your own. Spend a bit of time and try to identify the parallel structure that are present in paragraph 2 and 3 for example 2. Good luck! Now first, let's look at paragraph 2. In paragraph 2, we can see that the parallel structure exists in the capacity to and in the ability to. Both aims to define something. But what we can also see is the use of verbs. So first, we have analyze, we have carry out, we have investigate, we have reason, we have think. All these are action verbs. So by repeating these different action verbs, but they are all talking about doing something, performing an action. And so these are the paragraph structure that was used in paragraph 2, namely the repetitive use of action verbs, as well as the use of the capacity to and the ability to, similar grammatical structure. Let's look at paragraph 3, shall we? In paragraph 3, unlike paragraph 2, it uses a lot of nouns. So, for example, in paragraph 3, it started with the definition of what musical intelligence is, what it involves. So, performance, composition, and appreciation. All these are definition of what is needed to perform musical intelligence. Then, when it talks about the capacity of doing something, it needs to recognize and composes the different factors that involves with musical pitches, tone, and rhythm. All three of which, pitch, tone, and rhythm, are musical elements. And so in this particular paragraph, it uses little cluster of information from the individual fields, as well individual category or groups, as you would understand, to explain what musical intelligence is. Now that we're done explaining what coherence is, let's move on to cohesion. Cohesion basically links two different words or sentences and it creates unity. How we can establish cohesion is through the use of different grammatical structure to connect words, sentences, phrases in a paragraph. Cohesion can also help us to achieve coherence. Now, we're going to be looking at what strategy can help us to achieve cohesion. We're going to be looking at 3 different types of strategy that can help us achieve cohesion. Number 1, we're going to be looking at the use of coordinators, subordinators, and conjunction. The second one is reference words. And the third one is repetition of words or substitution or synonyms. So the first grammatical structure we'll be looking at is coordinating conjunctions. Coordinating conjunctions involve common connectors such as and, but, as, or correlative conjunctions that are longer, which is something like not only, but also. Let's look at an example. The first example is that in warm climate zones, water evaporates rapidly, so the concentration of salt is greater. In the second example, children not only need love, but they also need discipline. What grammatical features have you identified from these 2 different examples that suggest us the relationship between the ideas? Before we get into detail, let's talk about some grammatical rules. Number 1, in the first example, we need to know that when you are connecting 2 independent clauses, you must use a comma. Number 2, when you're connecting 2 words or phrases, do not use a comma. And so in the first example, we can see that the coordinated conjunction will be the word so. Whereas in the second example, the coordinating conjunction will be the word but. Now, let's look at the subordinating conjunctions. In the first example, we can see the word although being placed at the beginning of the sentence, whereas in the second example, the word although is placed in the middle of the sentence. What effect does it have when you're placing different subordinate conjunction at different parts of the sentence? Usually you will place a subordinate conjunction at the beginning of the sentence if you have the dependent clause in the middle of the sentence and you have the independent clause at the end of the sentence. When you're placing the subordinate conjunction in the middle, it's usually because you have the independent clause at the beginning and the dependent clause at the latter half of the sentence. Now, but what you need to be aware in terms of grammatical rule is that you need to put a comma after the dependent clause but not before it. So be aware. What are some of the transitional expressions? Transitional expression can also be seen as a type of connector. So for example, When the purpose of these transitional expressions are used to add or show sequences, we would have the normal chronological order words such as first, second, or third, or when we're demonstrating different importances, perhaps we're saying equally or besides. When we're talking about who comes first or second, it could be the first place or last. Again, different purposes will use different words. If we were to compare different items, we'll be using words like in similar fashion, in like manners, or by the same token. When we're contrasting different ideas, we'll be using although, however, regardless. When we're giving examples, we want to intensify our attitude. When we're giving an example, or when we're intensifying different attitudes or meaning we're trying to express, we could be using that is, in fact, specifically. Again, different transitional expressions would express different meaning, so use them carefully at the right setting. Next, when we're indicating time, we could be talking about as long as, until, shortly, to express where we are in terms of the time frame. When we want to repeat, to summarize, or to conclude, we could be using words like in other words, in summary, or to summarize. When we're trying to show the cause and effect of two different or similar ideas, we can be talking about as a result of, because, or consequently. These are all common words that we can use in our reading comprehension or in our writing output to ensure that our logic and our flow of idea is as we were intended. Now that we've seen some of the connectors, conjunctions, or transitional signals, let's do a little bit of exercise. In the following slides, we're going to be looking at different questions and you're going to try to pick the correct linking word for them. Are you ready? Let's go. Let's come back. In this exercise, we have two different questions. The first one, would it be on the other hand, in other words, or as a result? The answer should be in other words because the context talks about self-efficacy and what it indicates. The second answer should be thus, as it fits better into the context. Did you get it right? Let's try a second one. Now the answer should be on the contrary, because in the previous sentence, it talked about those with low self-efficacy, whereas in the latter sentence, it talked about high self-efficacy. Now in the second one, the answer should be in short, because it is making a conclusion of how self-efficacy actually influences an individual's success in performing a task, such as writing a particular writing task. Now, transitional signals may be extremely effective when you're organizing your idea, when you're trying to maintain the flow of your arguments. However, by overusing transitional signal, it actually could obstruct your clarity and flow, so be careful. With that in mind, when can you use linking words? Number one is when you're meeting the demand of grammatical rules. So whenever it asks, you must use. Number two, when you're trying to stress a particular point or making a connection between different points. Number three, it could be used when you are signaling changes in terms of changing your ideas, your positions, your views, or sections or parts. At last, you could also use linking words when you want to better organize your paragraph, but just don't overuse it. Next, we're going to be talking about reference words. Essentially, these are words or nouns that help us to refer to the things you mentioned previously in the same paragraph to help maintain the flow of your idea without repeating the same word over and over again, so that your writing is clear. Now, there are 4 types of reference word. Number 1 is pronouns, such as it, they, this, these. Next is demonstrative pronouns, such as this or that, these or those, plus the nouns. The 3rd type of reference words is relative pronouns, such as who, whose, and which. The 4th type of reference word is comparative references, which is words such as another, such, or other, plus the noun. Let's look at the first example. We can see that in the first example, it talked about the social skill questionnaire. In this particular paragraph, we can see words such as other problems, the results, the behaviors, and it was used. All these references to the previous social skill questionnaire. Now, what do these reference words do? They actually showed a sequential pattern. So when it began to talk about the social skill questionnaire, it first described what it is and how, in addition, other problems such as the ones that they've listed, such as screaming, crying, and yelling, are being assessed. Now, based on the result of these problems, what kind of things were gathered about the frequency of a given behavior and how these behavior occurred. So we can see that in the entire paragraph, different words were used, all referencing back to the word questionnaire, but in a sequential manner of different words to show a chronological order. Next, what we're going to be doing is we're going to try to identify the cohesive device in our second example. Have a go at it. Good luck. Now, in this example, we can see that at the beginning, it talked about in this article, and it described what this article is trying to achieve. Having described that, it started using the word this approach. Having described what this approach can do, it talked about this study and their control. The word this article and this study are actually referencing words to each other without repeating the same thing again. Whereas the word this approach and their control both talk about the techniques that were adopted in the study. So again, same meaning, different words. Next, we're going to be talking about repetition, substitution, and synonyms. Why do we need these different strategies? It can help us again to link different ideas together and establish cohesion. By repeating the same words, it actually helps us to stay focused and engaged throughout the essay. And this is helpful especially in longer texts where you've read it perhaps in page 1 and you have reached page 59 and sort of started to lose track. Next, synonym or substitution words would actually create a bit of variety in your text. So in one way, it prevents you from feeling a bit bored and as well as avoiding unnecessary repetitions. Now let's look at the first example. What synonyms can you find in this particular text? Let's go. Now, in this particular example, we can see that it talked about a strong sense of writing self-efficacy. Then we see the word self-efficacy in writing appearing again, and in the latter, it talked about again high self-efficacy. We can see this word being repeated 3 times throughout the text. But then it started talking about perseverance and resilience and how it is used during the process of performing a writing task. So by repeating the keyword self-efficacy over and over and over again at least 6 times in this text, it helps us to stay engaged to the topic. But at the same time, we explained what this high self-efficacy is through the word perseverance and resilience. Now we're done with cohesion. Let's go on to paragraph unity and why it is important. Now, unity in the paragraph usually means you're presenting one idea per paragraph only. You're not talking about several ideas in the same paragraph. Usually with this one particular idea, you need to supply with adequate supporting examples and data in order to draw a unified conclusion. Usually these supporting detail will go on to support the main paragraph and the conclusion will wrap up the paragraph. The feature of a unified paragraph would be that it would have one topic sentence surrounded by the main idea with sufficient supporting data to explain these main ideas in order to make your topic sentences valid. And so a standard paragraph will appear as so. First, you have an opening, much like when you're meeting a stranger and you're saying hi to them. You'll be talking about something that is related to the topic, but not necessarily going directly to it. Next, you have your topic sentence, which clearly states your intention and purpose of today's writing or reading. Then you have your controlling ideas or supporting ideas. You could have several of them. The minimum that we suggest is 2. And with these 2 different supporting ideas, you will need to provide, again, a minimum of 2 supporting data to ensure that your supporting ideas are well supported. At last, you will have a conclusion to refer back to your topic sentence through different methods to ensure that your topic is well concluded and that you have made your arguments today. Now, a paragraph structure is more or less of a baby. When a baby grows, it becomes a proper adult. And so an essay structure is essentially an expanded version of a paragraph. With that in mind, you will see that in an essay, usually we have a standard 5-paragraph structure. The first paragraph will always be the introduction. In the introduction, you will have your thesis statement, which acts as a similar role to topic sentence in your previous paragraph structure. Next, you will have your different body paragraph. Again, we'll suggest a minimum of 2 body paragraphs to support your thesis statement. Using a similar structure and the idea of a baby growing into an adult, in your first body paragraph and your second body paragraph, it actually possesses the same structure, having supporting details and having supporting examples. At last, you will have the concluding paragraph, which acts the same as the concluding sentence in your paragraph structure. Now that we have understood what a paragraph and what an essay should look like, can you help us to identify what doesn't belong in the following example? Read through it, identify it, and we're going to come back and discuss. Good luck! Now that you've finished reading, it can be quite evident that the underlying segment does not belong in this paragraph. Its idea does not correlate to the overall idea about the role of education and learning goal, and hence it does not align with the unity of this particular paragraph. Did you get it correctly? So in today's lesson, we explored three aspects: coherence, cohesion, and unity. We talked about how to link ideas, words, phrases together, and different grammatical strategies to help us to link these together. In today's lesson, we understood the need to maintain a good flow of writing, as a good paragraph should establish coherence, cohesion, and unity. We learned about what coherence is, which is the presentation of ideas in a logical order, and allows us as the reader to follow the reading smoothly. We talked about cohesion and how it bridges the connection between words and sentences, which creates a good flow of information. We also talked about the importance of having a unified paragraph, which should discuss one single idea, supported with example and different details. I hope today's lesson has been valuable to you in terms of helping you to establish the logical order of your writing. I hope this course has been useful to you, and now that you are equipped with better critical reading skills as well as better improved writing skills. Have a good day. Bye-bye.